Working in the high-end furniture game, you meet all sorts. But Jake? He was something else. Every Thursday, like clockwork, he'd stroll into the showroom with a coffee in hand and a lopsided grin that said he owned the place, even though he never bought squat. I remember the first time he walked in. I was arranging a display of Italian leather sofas, real pricey stuff. He sauntered over, his eyes scanning the price tags, but not in the way most folks do. "Hey there," he started, leaning too close to a lamp that cost more than most people's rent. "What's the story with this one? Looks comfy enough to sleep on forever." I smirked, stepping in before he could test that theory. "It's handcrafted. Top of the line. But yeah, definitely not for napping." Jake chuckled, running a hand through his messy hair. "Guess I'll have to keep my shoes off then." We chatted, mostly him asking about the furniture, me trying to gauge if he was serious about buying anything. Turns out, he wasn't. That first day, he left with a wave and a "see you around." One slow afternoon, he dropped by with that same casual swagger. The store was dead, which meant I couldn't avoid a longer convo. "So, Elsie, right? You ever get tired of talking about couches and tables all day?" I leaned against the counter, crossing my arms. "It pays the bills. Besides, it's not so bad." "What's your deal anyway? You come in here all the time but never buy anything. Are you in the biz or just like messing with me?" Jake's laugh was a full-bodied sound that filled the room. "Nah, I'm not messing with you. Just like the vibe here, I guess. Plus, you're kind of fun to talk to." That day, he stayed longer than usual. We talked about everything, music, movies, you name it. He had an opinion on everything and a story to match. When he finally left, he turned at the door. "Hey, Elsie? You want to grab coffee sometime? Outside of these expensive walls?" I hesitated. This was new territory. "Sure, why not? But if you're planning to run a tab there too, I'm bringing a calculator." "Deal," he said with a laugh, and then he was gone. Coffee with Jake became our thing. Every time we met, he'd pick a spot as eclectic as the furniture he never bought. Each cup of coffee felt like a continuation of a conversation that never really ended. It flowed from furniture to life plans, from jokes to personal dreams. A year flew by since Jake and I started dating. He had this knack for making ordinary days feel like little adventures. It wasn't just coffee dates anymore. We had road trips, late-night movie marathons, and lazy Sundays spent wandering through flea markets. He seemed genuine, you know? Like a real stand-up guy. Then, out of the blue, during a picnic in the city park, nothing fancy, just us and some takeaway sandwiches, Jake got down on one knee. I almost choked on my soda. "Elsie, will you marry me?" he asked, holding up a ring that caught the sunlight just right. I laughed, half because I was nervous, and half because it felt so right. "Are you serious right now?" "Dead serious. I want all my tomorrows to start with you." His eyes were all hopeful, like a kid waiting to see if he'd won the top prize at a carnival game. I didn't need to think about it. Yes, Jake. Of course, yes. The next thing was meeting his folks. Jake had mentioned them, but we hadn't spent time together, and from what he said, they were a bit uptight. He decided it was time to introduce me properly, so he planned a dinner at their place. When we arrived, their house was, let's just say, eclectic. Every corner crammed with some fancy piece from a different era or style. It was like walking into a museum where all the exhibits got mixed up. Jake's mom, Lydia, was as cold as the November air when she opened the door. "You must be Elsie," she said, eyeing me like I was a piece of furniture she couldn't quite place. "Yes, nice to meet you," I managed, trying not to let her scrutiny get to me. We sat down to dinner, and the vibe was stiff. Jake tried to lighten the mood, but his dad, Harold, only thought a bit after Jake mentioned my job at the luxury salon. "So, you work with expensive furniture? Designer pieces?" Harold asked, his tone shifting from indifferent to slightly intrigued. "That's right," I said. "I help people choose pieces that work for their homes." Lydia perked up too. And you have savings? That's good. Very good. The conversation slowly turned to their interest in my financial stability rather than getting to know me. It was awkward, but I played along. After dinner, Lydia cornered me in their living room turned bizarre showroom. Elsie, dear, could you suggest something for this room? It feels a bit cluttered, she said, waving a dismissive hand around. I looked around, biting my tongue to avoid saying it looked like a yard sale gone mad. Instead, I put on my professional smile. Well, you might consider streamlining the styles. Maybe pick a theme or a period you like and build around that. There are some great, affordable alternatives to these high-end pieces that can give you a cohesive look without breaking the bank. Lydia's nose wrinkled. I don't want alternatives. I want the real deal, the stuff you sell in your store. I just thought, with your discount or whatever, you could help us out. The way she said it, like I owed them something, irked me. But Jake was watching us, a hopeful look in his eyes, like he wanted this to go well. I'll see what I can do, I said finally, even though I knew I'd be careful about any help I offered. Wedding talks with Jake and his parents were like walking into a hurricane and trying to stop the wind. His folks had their hearts set on a blowout bash. But here's the kicker. Lydia, with her taste for the finer things, dropped this gem during dinner one night. Women always dream of big weddings, so they should foot the bill, right? Her smirk told me she wasn't just throwing ideas around. She meant it. I nearly choked on my water. Well, Lydia, this woman dreams of a simple wedding. We're not breaking the bank or my sanity over one day. Jake, caught in the crossfire, gave me that look, the please go easy on my mom look. But nah, not this time. Elsie's right, he finally said, though his voice had the weight of a man walking to the gallows. We'll keep it simple. The wedding day came, and true to my word, it was simple, beautiful, but understated. Jake's parents plastered on their best sour grapes faces throughout the ceremony. I caught Lydia muttering to a relative, "You'd think a girl who sells fancy furniture could put on a better show." I let it slide. The day was about us, not them. I was floating, my heart full, as I said I do, to a modest gathering of our closest friends and family in the little garden behind our favorite cafe. Post-wedding life kicked off with Jake suggesting we rent a large apartment. You can deck it out just how you like, he said, knowing full well his bank account was running on fumes. I'll pitch in when things pick up for me. So, I signed a lease for a chic place that cost a pretty penny, $2,500 a month. My savings took the hit for the furniture and appliances. I went all out, styling it into a space that could have graced the pages of a design mag. When his parents visited, Lydia's eyes nearly popped out. This place, it's like something out of a movie, she gasped, touching the suede of the couch like it might vanish. I want this. All of this. Jake beamed like he'd built the place himself. Elsie has an eye for style, he boasted to his friends over drinks one evening, the apartment serving as the perfect backdrop for his tall tales of taste. But the bills? All mine. Rent checks, furniture receipts, you name it. My bank account knew the truth, even if Jake was playing the part of the man of the house. One particularly sharp memory was when Lydia pulled me aside during one of their visits, her voice a mix of honey and vinegar. Elsie, darling, maybe you could help us do the same with our place? Since you're so good with money and all. The way she said it, like I was some kind of cash wizard, it almost made me laugh. Almost. Lydia, decorating's one thing, but managing money's another. You start with a budget, something realistic. Her face fell. Clearly, budget was a dirty word in her book. But I wasn't about to school my mother-in-law on finances on top of everything else. The grind at the luxury furniture salon paid off. After months of hustling, the bosses noticed, and bam, promotion landed in my lap. They shuffled me over to the wholesale department, a whole new game with bigger clients and bulk deals. The team there was tight-knit, but they welcomed me with open arms. One person, in particular, made the transition smoother, my new boss, Sarah. She was around my age, sharp as a tack, and had an eye for design that even I admired. We clicked right off the bat, swapping stories about nightmare clients and dream projects over coffee breaks. One evening, back at our plush apartment that I'd decked out from my own pocket, I mentioned Sarah to Jake over dinner. "She's got this killer instinct for deals, you know? Closed two just this week that everyone thought were dead in the water," I said, passing him the salt. Jake, munching on his spaghetti, looked intrigued. "Sounds like a powerhouse. We should have her over for dinner, show off some of your handiwork here. Might be good for your career, huh?" So, we invited Sarah over the following weekend. I spent the day tidying up, while Jake decided he was Gordon Ramsay. The menu was his doing: roast chicken, garlic mashed potatoes, and green beans, fancy but not too over the top. Sarah arrived on time, her eyes widening as she stepped into the living room. "Wow, Elsie, this place is incredible. You did all this?" "All her," Jake chimed in, leading her on a tour. "Wait till you see the dining setup." Dinner was lively, thanks to Jake. He was on a roll, cracking jokes, refilling glasses, laughing a little too loud. At some point, he was more of a host than I was in my own home. I caught him a few times, being extra attentive to Sarah, laughing a touch too heartily at her jokes, which were funny but not that funny. It bugged me enough that I pulled him aside while Sarah was in the restroom. "Hey, what's with the show?" I whispered, nodding toward the dining room. Jake kept his voice low, a serious look crossing his face for just a second. "I am trying to impress her. For you. Maybe she'll speed up another promotion or something." I frowned. "I don't need you to charm my boss for a promotion, Jake. I can handle my career." When Sarah came back, we rounded off the evening with dessert, chocolate cake, Sarah's favorite, as I'd mentioned to Jake. He listened, at least when it suited his plans. After Sarah left, praising the meal and the company, Jake slumped on the couch, grinning like he'd won a prize. "See? Told you it'd go great." I sat beside him, not quite sharing the sentiment. "It was nice, but don't do that again. I don't need a show, just be normal next time." Jake just waved a hand, dismissing my concerns as he turned on the TV. "You worry too much. It was fine." But it wasn't fine, not really. His act felt off, like he was playing a part. Since the promotion, my paycheck had grown nicely, which, naturally, led Jake to find new ways to spend it. First up, his wardrobe. "Babe, I can't keep wearing these old suits. If you want me to be promoted too, I gotta look the part," he'd argued one evening, thumbing through a catalog of designer suits that cost more than our rent. "Fine, we'll update your closet. But keep it sensible, okay?" I conceded, figuring if it boosted his confidence, it might help him in his own career. The new Jake was a dapper one, and he was all too eager to show off his revamped style. Not long after the wardrobe overhaul, he had another idea. How about dinner out with Sarah again? Could be fun, right? It sounded harmless enough, so I agreed. The night was a success, full of laughter and pricey wine. At the end of the evening, when the check came, Jake made a show of grabbing it. "Let me get that for you," he told Sarah with a flourish. She smiled, a bit awkwardly. "Oh, you don't have to, but thank you, Jake." Then, with his hand on the leather folder, he leaned in close to me. "Babe, can you cover this? Just play along." Puzzled and slightly annoyed, I nodded, slipping my card to the waiter while Sarah was distracted. Jake was beaming like he'd just closed a major deal, and I couldn't help but feel like I was being played in my own life. This pattern didn't stop. Dinners turned into weekend getaways, which Jake insisted on initiating, and I unwittingly financed. He'd tell Sarah, "Don't worry about the cost, we've got it," while winking at me across the room. It was during one such trip, a luxurious beach resort stay, that I hit my breaking point. As I signed yet another exorbitant bill, Jake clapped me on the back. "Isn't this great? Sarah's having a wonderful time. Good for your career, this." That night, in our hotel room, I confronted him. "Jake, I can't keep this up. These trips, these dinners. It's too much. We're supposed to be a team, but I feel like your bank more than your wife. Jake's face darkened, his voice cold and sharp. I'm doing this for you, for us. If you can't see that, maybe you should just enjoy it alone. I'm busting my ass here trying to help your career. After that, things changed. Jake started staying late at work, or at least that's what he said. Sudden meetings, unexpected calls, it became his new normal. I was sad, sure, but also furious. I wasn't going to be his meal ticket anymore. The joy of our dinners and trips had soured, turning into a reminder of how much I was losing, not just money, but a partner I thought I knew. The call from Sarah to come to her office immediately sent a cold wave of anxiety through me. What could it be? My mind raced with every possible mistake I might have made, every deadline, every email. I knocked on her office door, my heart hammering in my chest, and stepped inside. Sarah was sitting behind her desk, her expression serious, the usual warmth absent. My gaze fell on an alarming number of bouquets and unopened gift boxes piled in one corner. Elsie, please, have a seat, she gestured to the chair across from her. We need to talk about something important. Her tone was so grave it made my stomach turn. I sat down, clutching my hands in my lap, preparing for the worst. Sarah sighed, her eyes meeting mine with a mixture of concern and discomfort. It's about Jake, she started, and my heart sank. His behavior has been, well, inappropriate. I blinked, confused. Inappropriate how? She gestured to the gifts. He's been sending these. Flowers, jewelry, even designer clothes. It's excessive and, frankly, uncomfortable for me. He's crossing professional and personal boundaries, Elsie. I felt a hot flush of embarrassment. I had no idea, I stammered, feeling naive and foolish. Sarah leaned forward, her voice softening. I value our friendship, and I respect you immensely, Elsie. That's why I need to be honest. He's making advances. I've told him repeatedly that I'm not interested, that I see him only as your husband, but he isn't listening. I swallowed hard, a lump forming in my throat. Thank you for telling me, Sarah. I'll handle it. My voice was a whisper, barely holding back tears. I got home, still reeling, only to find Jake in the living room, a suitcase by his side. His demeanor was light, almost giddy, which only fueled my growing anger. There you are. I've got news. He beamed at me impudently, as if oblivious to the storm inside me. I've decided it's time for a fresh start. Quit my job today, and I think it's best if my parents move in here. You should find another place. His words hit me like a physical blow. What are you talking about, Jake? Your parents? Why would I leave? He shrugged, annoyingly calm. Come on, Elsie. This place is too good for just us. And let's be honest, it fits their style more. Plus, you can afford another spot, no big deal, right? I stared at him, disbelief and anger intertwining. No big deal? You cheat, you lie, you spend my money, and now you kick me out? Whoa, cheat? What are you on about? His feigned ignorance was infuriating. Don't play dumb, Jake. Sarah told me everything, the gifts, the advances. How could you? My voice cracked, tears threatening to spill. Jake's face hardened. So what? She's richer and more promising than you, so I just want to get a better life. Just pack up and go, Elsie. His words were a dagger, cutting through any remaining ties of affection I had for him. That night, I lay in the spare bedroom, the reality of my crumbling marriage suffocating me. Jake's betrayal was clear, his intentions laid bare. By morning, I knew what I had to do. The next morning, I had found a new apartment online, a smaller, quieter place that felt like a fresh start. I signed the lease electronically and called the movers, all before Jake had even stirred from his sleep. As the movers started arriving, I was methodically showing them around, pointing out what to take. I'd gathered all the receipts and proofs of purchase for the furniture, my furniture, that I'd paid for with my hard-earned money. I was ready, determined. Jake stumbled out of the bedroom, bleary-eyed and confused as he saw the movers loading up boxes. What's going on, Elsie? Why are you taking the furniture? I held up the folder stuffed with receipts. Because it's mine. I bought it, I paid for it, and it's coming with me. Any questions? He opened his mouth, then closed it, the reality hitting him as his eyes swept over the evidence in my hands. Just then, his parents burst through the door. His mother, Lydia, took one look at the scene, movers carrying out chairs and tables, and she lost it. Stop. Stop right now. Put my furniture back. The movers paused, looking unsure. I nodded firmly at them. Keep going, guys. It's all documented. Lydia was frantic, her voice rising in panic as she turned to Jake. How are we supposed to live here without any furniture? What are we going to do? I couldn't help but laugh. Oh, don't worry, Lydia. I'm sure Jake's new girlfriend will furnish your lives splendidly, I said, the sarcasm dripping from every word. His mother looked at him hopefully, her eyes darting back and forth between the emptying apartment and her son. And your little boss is going to buy us all this? Is she going to take care of us now? I shook my head, almost in disbelief at their audacity. Actually, I spoke to her yesterday. She wants nothing to do with you or Jake. She's sending back every ridiculous gift he bought. The look on Jake's face was priceless, a mix of shock, embarrassment, and a realization that his schemes were crumbling around him. Lydia's wrath turned to her son as she poked him hard in the chest. You fool. We could have had a good life here with Elsie supporting us, and you ruined it. Jake's desperation was palpable as he turned to me, his voice shaky. Elsie, please, don't do this. We can fix it. We can start over. I handed him an envelope, the divorce papers I had prepared. This is the only thing left to start over. My lawyer will call you. As I walked out of the apartment, I didn't look back. I was leaving behind more than just a bad marriage and a duplicitous husband. I was leaving behind the old Elsie who tolerated far too much. Settling into my new apartment was like breathing fresh air after being submerged underwater for too long. The place wasn't as large as the last, but every square inch of it was mine, truly mine. I threw myself into decorating, picking pieces that weren't just stylish but spoke to my newfound independence. I went for bold colors this time, vibrant blues and emerald greens, each room a testament to starting over. Meanwhile, Jake and his parents weren't faring so well. Last I heard, they couldn't keep up with the $2,500 rent without my paycheck and had to downsize dramatically. They ended up in a cramped, run-down place on the other side of town. Jake refused to settle for a regular job. He bounced around, looking for another golden ticket, while his mom, Lydia, had no choice but to get a retail job. Their palace built on expectations had crumbled, and from what snippets I caught through mutual friends, so had their tolerance for each other. Then, one afternoon as I was setting up a new art piece in the living room, my phone rang. The sweet, sugary tone of Lydia's voice oozed through the speaker when I answered. Elsie, darling, it's Lydia. How have you been? We've all missed you so much over here. I almost dropped the phone, half laughing, half in disbelief. Missed me, Lydia, or my paycheck? Let me guess, you want me to come back? To what? Watch Jake chase dreams while I foot the bill. No thanks, Lydia. You don't understand, Elsie, we're family. She tried again, her voice now a mix of desperation and saccharine. Family? I scoffed. Family doesn't use each other, Lydia. You should try supporting yourselves for a change. Before she could respond, I hung up and blocked the number. That part of my life was closed, sealed, and good riddance to it. In contrast to the chaos that was my past life, my career was flourishing. Sarah and I had grown closer, her respect for me solidifying after I handled the personal turmoil with as much grace as I could muster. She hinted last week that another promotion was on the horizon, something that would put me even more in control of my professional path. It was like the universe rewarding me for all the hardships. One evening, sitting in my newly decorated living room, I reflected on everything that had happened. The apartment looked incredible, a true reflection of my style and spirit. I had new friends coming over that night, colleagues who appreciated me for my skills and company, not for what my bank account could do for them. The doorbell rang, pulling me from my thoughts. I opened the door to smiling faces, genuine and happy to see me. As we gathered around the sleek, modern dining table I'd picked out myself, laughter filled the space, bouncing off walls that echoed a new chapter of my life.
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked. We could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children. With zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job. Having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. All right, everyone's presentations are done. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me. There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! What's wrong? Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I immediately followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong. Mike! What have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. I didn't do anything wrong. You're still saying that? Look at him. Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract? Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go. Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him. There's no way he was pushed aside. Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he? I don't remember that part. I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you've failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.